From Music for All and presented by Yamaha, it's Mind the Gap, a practical web series for young and future music educators. Tonight on the program, from Kennesaw, Georgia, Cory Futrell. From Kennesaw, Georgia, Paula Krupiczewicz. From San Antonio, Texas, Jarrett Lipman. Tonight's conversation moderated by Joseph Pisano and David Starnes. Please welcome Joseph Pisano and David Starnes.
Good evening, everybody. My name is David Starnes, and I currently am the Director of Orchestras at Kennesaw Mountain High School in Kennesaw, Georgia. My cohort tonight for moderator was to be Dr. Joe Pisano. Joe had something come up at work today, unavoidable. Joe is in the software creation business, and it's a deadline that he absolutely had to meet. So you get to put up with just me, myself, and I tonight. You actually get three people for the price of one. So welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. Just a real quick, some real housekeeping items, Number one, I want to say a special thank you to the Yamaha Corporation of America for helping to fund this series, Mind the Gap. It is incredibly important for us to not only look after teachers that are developing, those that are in the student teaching field right now, but those young teachers we're doing everything we can to hang on to, and you're among that crowd tonight. We may even have some veteran teachers in the room with us tonight too, and we thank you for being with us and hope you get something out of this. We're joined tonight by three amazing panelists in their own right, and they were selected based on current situation, actually, like what they're going through right now, to be able to offer to you real life stuff. And I would say in the trenches, but we're all there right now, and I hope that they'll be able to offer some insight. So ladies first, I would like to start with our first panelist. Paula, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Paula Krupiczewicz, and I teach orchestra at North Cobb High School in Kennesaw, Georgia. And I've been there about 14 years, and it's been quite the treat to start on this virtual remote learning adventure this year.
Thank you for joining us, Paula. Cory.
Hi, thanks for having me tonight. My name is Cory Futrell, Assistant Director of Bands at Kennesaw Mountain High School. This is my fourth year here. Kind of like what Paul said, it's kind of interesting, start to the year, but obviously we're making the most of it and getting kids excited still about music.
Thanks for joining us, Cory. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Jarrett Lipman.
Hey everybody, my name is Jarrett Lipman. I am the Director of Bands down at Claudia Taylor Johnson in San Antonio. This is my 13th year here at the school. I'm really excited to get a chance to share with you tonight, and I hope you're doing well and looking forward to what we have to offer.
Well, we thank you, Jarrett, and we thank all of our panelists for being here. Just a little rewind so we set the stage for tonight. If you were with us in part one 2 weeks ago, as far as the music technology online instruction phase, you know that we talked a lot about the what, and the what being those aspects of teaching in a either fully virtual environment or maybe a hybrid scenario, which some of you are teaching in. But the bottom line is this is a footprint that is completely uncharted. We are all, whether veteran teachers or new teachers or whatever it might be, we are creating this on the fly. And I think that's one of the things that we want to talk to you about. If you're feeling that pressure, if you're feeling that anxiety and maybe that consternation about how you're going to get through tomorrow, you're looking at a 32-year veteran teacher, and I ask myself that every single day. So you are not in this alone. The three panelists are veteran teachers as well, and we hope to offer you a little bit of insight and relaxation as you go back to your kids tomorrow. As I said, last session was about the what. Tonight is really about the how. It's about, now that you're in this situation, how can we offer you some programs and some strategies and some approaches and some philosophies that are going to make teaching fun in this environment. And I'll share personally before I turn it over to our panelists that when we started this in Cobb County on the 14th of August, the first week of it seemed like 12 months. That first week was brutal because none of us knew what we were doing, and we would come out after each class saying, how are we going to make it through the year? We were just notified that we've got to do this until at least November the 5th at the high school level, and it's going to be a while. So we need to figure this out. I came out of classes today what seemed like a 10-15-minute class that was a 70-minute session. So the pacing of things is working. I think the kids are getting more understanding about what we're trying to do. But I will tell you this, what doesn't kill us will make us stronger. I know that if I have to do this, I can do this. And I'm sure that's the sentiment of our panelists as well. So I'm just going to throw this out there for our panelists. Let's talk about how you approach the objective of each day, and maybe talk a little bit about the varying levels of classes, because obviously, you know, a 6th grade class or an 8th grade class is completely different. A 9th grade class is a 12th grade class, completely different. And I think that's important because we're having to create even more preps based on the ability levels. But how do you look at it? Do you look at it as a daily thing? Do you look at it as a weekly thing, a monthly thing? I'd be interested to hear from our panelists on that one. Paula, why don't you take us through your process in that?
Sure. When I started, I basically struggled with how the heck I'm going to write it all down and get it all figured out. I'm a kind of a teach on the fly kind of girl, and to actually write things down and have it prepared in advance really makes the brain think differently. I had to go through and I just made a calendar chart and figured out what I wanted to do. And then that didn't really work. And so then I was going by day, and then I figured, okay, I'll go by week. And so I can kind of set up my day. Okay, we do welcome, introduction, and then I do a music history lesson. So I'm on this Baroque module I'm working on. And as I'm doing this, I Baroque music, history, and then I'm applying it to the music that we're learning. Bow strokes, music of Vivaldi, characteristic styles, and kind of all blending that together so that they're getting some kind of musical element and technique all at the same time while still learning music history, which a lot of times we know on the high school level, it's really difficult to think that way. And then it's like, okay, what techniques can I get in there and assess them on? Because we have to be assessing them more often by having a video sent in, and I use Flipgrid to do that. So I can see, and then I'm checking, you know, are they playing in tune? Are they playing with the right bow stroke? Do they have the right setup? So there's a lot more assessment in a sense that goes into things that are written down versus more or less teaching on the fly, because it definitely has to be planned in advance of getting in front of that classroom.
Yeah, and I going to echo on that. I've tried a couple of different strategies myself where I went in and planned the day and then I planned the week, but it wasn't until last week that I printed a September calendar, an October calendar, and a November calendar, and literally went in so I could see the units right in front of me and then bulleted underneath the units day by day. And you could actually see the progression and the digression of each week, where the peak of the lesson is and how you're going to get in and out of that peak. So, you know, if you're somebody that operates on calendars and can see the lesson take place, I think exactly what Paula said is a great idea, because I think of it also as if I were in the kids' chair, like how would I feel after each lesson? Did this person as a teacher waste my time, or did they really, I could tell they did something, they came to that class prepared, and I can see the direction of where the lesson's headed. And we, you know, in the South, we call that spitballing. We don't want to do that. We want to make sure that the kids understand the arc of what it is that we're doing and not just a day-to-day bullet point. Jarrett, let's jump to the great state of Texas. Tell us what you're doing out there as far as planning on a day-to-day, month-to-month, week-to-week basis.
Sure, I would be happy to. So thank you. You know, just thinking about the whole idea of switching from a live instruction over to a Zoom, I think it changes everything in terms of your goal setting. So if you set goals to try to have you know, a great band or a great ensemble or things like that, it becomes really different. So much of the teaching that's going to happen over the Zoom platform is going to be focused more on building individual skills, or is going to be focused more on trying to get the sections to be more confident. So we started doing the Zoom classes back in April when this blew up, and you know, quickly realized that ensemble teaching was going to have to become secondary for a little bit as we worked to figure that out. So we spent a lot of time identifying weaknesses and strengths in the program in terms of the things that the individual players did well, and the things maybe that they didn't do well. And what we kind of settled on was something that could work across the curriculum was ear training and oral skills. So we spent a tremendous amount of time going back to the basics of key signatures and then doing solfege. Every exercise that we've played in our technique packet, from Remington to lip slurs, we've taught the kids the solfege and how to sing with that. And so everything has been about trying to continue to move forward on what we would be doing during a normal year without the emphasis necessarily on learning band music. We do smart music has been a great tool, being able to put up pieces that the kids really like to play and they can play along with them and learn their parts. But we've used smart music more as a motivator than actually an assessment tool, just so that they can play along with something. So I think really it's about being willing to give up a little bit of what you would normally be thinking about in terms of teaching a band, and just going back to what you might do in a beginner class with sixth graders, or what we might have done in our college ear training classes, or maybe even what a private lesson teacher would do. And I guess that for us, it's just that the biggest thing is realizing that it can look different, but you can still be on that same journey with them. You don't necessarily have to abandon what you've wanted to do. You just approach it with a different skill set.
Great advice, Jarrett. And one of the things a colleague of mine said to me is, we wish we had more individual time with the kids. We wish we could teach ear training and theory. Well, be careful what you wish for, because the pandemic has given us that. And we're in a situation now where we have to be careful about what we wanted, because the opportunity is there. Now, how do we do it? And I think that's where we're here to help you with that tonight. And I'm sure several of you are along that mindset right now too. I did drop a note in the chat that if you have any question throughout tonight, to please feel free to drop that in there, whether it's on topic. If we're on that topic or not, we will address it when we get to that. We want you to leave here with your questions answered. Cory, why don't you take us through a little bit of your process about what you're doing?
Yeah, so the one thing I'll start with this is, with everything going online and being very different for everybody, it would be very easy for everybody to be overwhelmed with how do we do this? What do we do? So the three words that I've always told myself is keep it simple. Try not to overthink everything that we're doing. And we've already heard a ton of great examples of what we're doing, but for me, it's like, how can we make this exciting for the kids? And some of that is giving them some options, finding where their interests at, so we kind of do some different things with our students where we're actually giving them opportunities to learn how to compose. So we use the program called Flat.io. It's a music writing software that it's great because it's free, but it works on computers, but also tablet devices and phones as well. So kids can use any of those devices to be able to compose music and to learn that. And we start very basic and simple with them, teaching them general music theory skills, ear training. Like last week, we did something where we've asked all the kids to have a tuner. If they have smart music, there's a tuner on that app as well. And we're trying to okay, just play the first note of the, B flat major scale, play the second note. Okay, now get a tuner out. Here, play those and hear the pitch differences. So then they can start hearing, what does that sound like? And man, I'm really off from that. Or especially when they go to the third, then it really they start really hearing a difference there. So those are some different characteristics and things that we're doing is to like we've already heard, it's like, we have time now to work on these individual skills. And I think that's really where we're gearing our motivation and our efforts is towards the individual, and how can we make them better from individual musicians and just the understanding of music. I tell the students this all the time. We, as human beings, we enjoy doing things that we're good at. So if we can get them all better at being musicians and knowing and understanding how music works, they're going to love it that much more. And then when they come back, I think it's going to be that much more exciting for them.
Couldn't agree more. And I'll tell you a strategy that I actually used this weekend. I took note cards and I wrote down every single application that I'm using, be it Flipgrid or we use a thing called Padlet, and also Flat.io and Smart Music. And I just put them all out on the table. And I started looking at lessons and going, how could I use this one as the hook and transition to this one, but ultimately the lesson becomes about this one. And if you can see those things on note cards and move them around, you'll actually see your lesson actually take shape. And the pacing of your lesson will be really, really methodical. And it's not going to be as throwing the cards up in the air and letting them come down and wherever they land, they land. You're actually planning for, I'm going to that arc of that lesson, but I'm going to get there through these things. And I think that's real important. There is no textbook out there to tell us how to do what we're doing right now. I've even asked the kids, what are the most effective things? What do you like best about what we're doing right now? And to hear, you know, what Cory said, the Flat IO program, they got to do a composition project for me this past week after we'd done some music theory and talked about sharps and flats and key signatures and major minor. And now here's Flat IO. I'm going to have you write 16 measures in your choice of key signature. And Friday, we married that with they have to perform their work. So we used Flipgrid to perform their work. So the pressure was off for the live performance. It was all about recording it the night before, and then we played it on Friday, and everybody had their best take. So I just think it's about maybe looking at what you're already doing. Cory is absolutely right. Just keep it simple. Keep it in the box, because when the kids start feeling the train come off the tracks, that's when, you know, they'll get disinterested in this as well. You know, we're talking about the topic I think that I want to move to next is about the time. The lesson goes by either really fast or really slow, but the prep time to be able to create even 10 minutes is immense. So why don't we start with Jarrett on this one. Jarrett, how do you approach the prep time as far as building a lesson plan?
So in terms of the prep, we kind of look at each of the windows of time that we have. So whether it's a 30 or a 45 or a 70, and depending on our age group, our middle school kids are in 60 minutes right now. Some of our high school groups are in 60 and some are in 70. We've tried to factor in the Zoom fatigue, you know, that they've been sitting at computers or will be all day. So if I have a 70-minute lesson, the biggest thing we try to avoid is bell to bell. So we kind of start with the structure of, you know, maybe it's going to be 10 minutes of a do now. We've been using something like a musictheory.net or something that's interactive that gets them going while they're filtering into the room. And you can kind of check attendance. You're not jumping on announcements. And then maybe you do 5 minutes of announcements. So you're 15 minutes in. Then you've got what we would call our core lesson. So that could be anything. That we try to do something different every day, whether it's a music theory or a little music history, or, you know, maybe we're breaking down a fundamental exercise and then a 15-minute break. We always put a 10 or 15-minute break in the middle of the class to break it up. And then the back end of the class is usually individual performances. And I think for us, the biggest thing is if we're doing those performances, we try to let the kids practice on their own. So it might not be something where everybody is sitting listening, but they're actually all playing, kind of like class piano would be, where you're all practicing and the teacher drops in. And I just think anything you can do during the period to keep them from listening to you talk for 70 minutes and keep them playing. Even if you're like a personal trainer at the gym, you just micromanage their playing and go, okay, everybody 5 minutes on Remington, 5 minutes on scales. And you don't necessarily have to hear them, but it keeps them on that diet so that they stay fresh as a player. So I think for us, that's kind of been how we've approached it, is just, you know, breaking the period into chunks and then filling in those individual spaces with a different piece of the routine every day, so it stays as fresh as it can.
You hit something on the head, Jarrett, because like, imagine a student that is in your 4th block class, if you're on a block schedule, or 7-period day, your 7th block class. They have been doing this all day long. And I can even tell you, even just sitting in department meetings or faculty meetings, a 30-minute meeting, you're like ready to, you know, claw your eyeballs out. But these kids have been doing, for us, 70, 70, 70, 70. And by the end of the day, you know, it's a long day. It's 280 minutes of sitting in front of a computer, you know, and not getting to play video games. So I think that's something that's a great point. And I'm glad you brought that up, the fatigue aspect of that. Paula, do you want to chime in on that?
Sure. I kind of structure my class a little bit different. Everyone says about, oh, have little asynchronous time, but I found as I've gotten into a groove this semester, my asynchronous time tends to be very little. But I think just because the way I get them involved in the class and just preparing in an aspect is, you know, if you're trying to prepare some kind of music history lesson, mind you, even if it's like a 15-minute lesson, preparing like a really nice PowerPoint can take hours, which I've discovered, because I can't just make them simple. You have to like put in all the photos, and I try and make my PowerPoints pretty interactive so that the kids can also, I load them up in we use CTLS in Cobb County. So I load them up in the system so they can go back and actually review whatever we worked on. And I try, like in the Baroque module that I'm working on, I try and find authentic Baroque performances from YouTube and implant them in there so they can hear the sound and they can actually see what the actual instruments look like. So that's really kind of how I centered the first part, but I've noticed that it can take anywhere between 2 to 4 hours to make a PowerPoint, depending on how involved you get with that. And then I usually give them about 5 minutes. We do that at the beginning, and I give them a little bit of break to go get their instruments out and get them tuned. And then I say, okay, at this time, we're gonna all be back together with your instruments tuned. And we do a lot of call and response kind of playing. I'll do it, I see them do it. I'll do it, I see them do it. And we do quite a few repetitions that way. And a lot of the kids right now are like, gosh, we're so, I don't want to say remedial, but at the same time, we haven't really played together since March. So it's like getting them back to moving their instruments, getting their fingers, getting their ear back in tune. And I like to play because then they can hear, accurate intonation, so they have something to play off. So I'll play and then they join me. And we do anything from breaking it down to just moving the bow exercises to anything, moving the finger patterns, just hearing correct intonation. We've started doing shifting exercise, and then I'm going to do a little assessment with that. And then just getting into like a musical example. And what I've done is just arranged a bunch of, I take like 4-bar, 8-bar tunes, and I arrange it so every student can have the melody, because a lot of times in the orchestra, the poor cellos and bass players are playing some kind of doo-wop part, and so they want to actually play the melody. So this is their time where they can play the melody, which is really, really great. And they seem to be enjoying that so far. But when you start playing, the time goes by really fast. And like Jarrett said, it's like a small chunk. It's like working little bits. Okay, we mastered this today. Okay, we're going to add the next chunk tomorrow.
Great point. And Paula, do you set time parameters for each of those activities that how long each one of those blocks is going to be? Or is it more organic and now it feels like we need to move on?
It's pretty organic. If I look at my clock, by the time kids get in class, make a few announcements, do either a history or history review, I have about 30 to 40 minutes left of the 70-minute block to do music. And I kind of break it down, especially with the top class. We do about 10 minutes of warm up, and then we'll do 10 minutes of scale and 10 minutes of an excerpt of something. So it kind of happens organically, because I don't want to get stuck too long on one thing, because then the kids get bored with it.
Right.
So it's trying to go, okay, we need to work on that. Let's address that more the next time.
Yeah, great point. Cory, what you got?
So I think pacing was a big question when we first started doing this. You're teaching in person, you can really get into like grooves of like, okay, I know how to do this with warm up and music and technique and whatnot. But with this, it is different, So when the school year started, it was kind of mapping out, like, okay, how much time do I want to spend on all these things? Okay, 5 minutes for this, 10 minutes for this, 15 for this. I would say the longest segment that we would spend on anything might be 20 minutes, but that's typically on something that's on their own, when they're practicing something. Part of that too is like developing and starting to get that understanding of what skills do we want students to gain, over this time, and understanding it's like, okay, these goals here are transferable. So what are those transferable skills that they can gain from this time when we're online? And then the next part of that though is, the instruction for me is more or less teaching them how to be a more critical evaluator of themselves, how to analyze everything that they're doing. So then when we say go, they're off and they're doing it. And then when they come back, it's like, okay, what did you hear? What are you getting? Or it's even like, hey, record yourself, even on their phone, record this little small, like these 2 measures. What did you hear? When they play when we did like the interval training, like I want you to record yourself and listen to it and then go back so you can hear it. It's those kind of skills like that, like the ear training, just like the composition understanding, like even today we want the kids to learn, get a better understanding of their scales. So we taught it by teaching them tetrachords today. Like, so let's learn the front half of a scale. And then essentially that's also the kind of the same for the back half of the scale, but even some of our top kids, like their minds were blown. It's like, they get so used to like, oh, I just play it. I just play the scales. But then it's like, oh, wait a minute. Now they understand it in a completely different capacity, so it's those types of things like that, which for you, it's like, again, that keeping it simple, just identify the skills that you want your kids to know and learn, and then find like some really efficient, effective models to do that and get them to be more critical of evaluators for what they're doing.
That's great advice. And I think, you hit on something that I want to transition to, and it's about the individual and the ensemble and how we do both of those. But one of the things that keeps coming up among educators and virtual learning is this topic of camera. Like, when do you know that the kid is on camera? They're engaged. You can see that. When you see a name and that's it, you got to wonder, do I tell them turn your camera on because I need to show you this aspect of things if you were on one-on-one in a classroom with them, or do you dare say that? So I'd love to get, that's something that I was asked at the last session about how we utilize cameras. We all know there's privacy issues. And then somebody also said, well, you would never go into a classroom and turn your back to a teacher either. So that feels a little bit of that way. But how do we deal with that? How do we deal with making sure the kids are getting the individual time that we're, like Paula said, 3-4 hours to put a lesson together, and then you come to that class all fired up and ready to go and you've got names. So how do you deal with that, guys?
I'll go. So one of the things that and part of this, honestly, and this is a challenge with being online, is building that rapport with students, especially new students that really haven't met you yet. I mean, yes, we get to know our 8th graders, but they don't know us like, the rest of the high school kids that have been with us. So how do we build that rapport through a camera? And I think it takes a little bit of time, and unfortunately it takes a little bit more time. And one of the things that we started doing, and this might be different everywhere else, but like for us, Wednesdays is a complete asynchronous day. So what we have started doing is we set up these 10-minute time slots in each class for students to sign up, and then they'll come and and I've met with all the freshmen on Wednesdays so far. I haven't met with all of them, but it's something that we do, and just those 10-minute conversations, just that rapport that you start in the relationships that you can build with students. And I'll be honest, my first question is, outside from band, what do you like to do? So they're like, wait a minute, you're not just a band director, you're a human being, you're a real person, so, and it's really like kind of breaking down that barrier of like, I'm a real person, I'm passionate about music. This is what I do, but I want to get to know you and know who you are. So that's one strategy of getting them to turn their cameras on, because now it's easy for me to go in and say, hey, like I want to look at the screens really quick while you're practicing this on your own, because I can diagnose like, hey, here's posture stuff that I can help fix. Oh, I see, like your finger technique is this, or your embouchure you're doing. There's some people like brass players, you're puffing your cheeks, and I can do that and kind of get them to buy into what it is that I'm trying to do. Because for them, they're like, why do I need to have my camera on? But if you kind of go through that process of explaining, hey, I can be way more effective and help you, if I can see you and what you're doing. And then, like I said, like those little one-on-one meetings have really been beneficial with that relationship building.
Jarrett, Paula, you want to take anything off of that?
I can lead up. I've found that at the school I'm at, we're struggling more and more with getting kids to be on camera. I think this week, especially after the break, I think in 2 of my classes, only half the kids. So we had a conversation with our colleagues. We should have a little experiment. And like Cory said, like we would never go into a classroom and turn our backs to the teacher and have them teach, or sit with our camera off. And I said, it's not comfortable for me per se, because a lot of times I'm like, what am I looking at on the screen? And your eyes are all over the place sometimes, but I want to see their faces, because then I have some interaction. And I don't know if the kids in this generation that's coming up feel that same way. It's like, I want to talk to somebody. And so we even had maybe we should just have a class one day where the teachers turn off their cameras and just talk and see what they would say. I'm sure they would be like, oh, Dr. K, put your camera on. We need to see you. We need to see. But that's kind of how we get, like, I love that interaction, just to watch them. And like Cory, you said, oh, if I can see what they're doing, I don't necessarily need to hear it. I can see it and help them fixing, especially with their setup in their bow grip and just moving their arm. I can't hear per se that they're playing in tune. Every now and then I'll be like, anybody want to play that for us? And it's like crickets in the room. And I'm like, oh, come on, I do it all the time. But like, just be brave. And some of the kids will be brave, but I think that just comes with time and getting used to this kind of atmosphere of playing.
Agree. Jarrett?
Sure. I think the camera thing is, it's a challenge. It's going to be, and probably, there's not going to be an answer that works for every community. Some kids are not using cameras because they've got issues with bandwidth at their house, and if they use the camera, it's going to slow their connection. Sometimes there may be a situation where the kids don't want you to see the house, or they're embarrassed about it. And so I think that the hardest part is going to be, what's going to work for one. You've just got to kind of adapt it. And in our school, in our situation, the philosophy was cameras are always on, and if a student turns their camera off, our principal asked to remove us from remove the student from the classroom. So that discipline thing was established early on, and then as we got into certain situations, it was everybody's on unless you have a special request of why it's going to be off, and then that puts the onus on you as the teacher and the student to kind of communicate about why the camera is on or off. But we had a student that I was teaching the other day who was embarrassed and ashamed about a really bad haircut that they had gotten, and they didn't want to have their camera on, and it was like, that's one of those times where they need to have the camera on. We need to be able to monitor and to do that. So I think it's going to be different for everybody, and you just want to keep exploring ways when you start to see them go off. I agree with everybody. It's so important that we keep it on to keep them engaged, because when the camera's off, you really have no idea. They could be on 2 different classes at once. They could be checking emails. They could be playing video games, and we always want to give them the benefit of the doubt, but they're also smart, and some of them are devious, and so it's figuring out that balance of how to keep them engaged.
Yeah, I agree with all that, and I think I'm going to go back to what Cory said, because one of the things we want to talk about tonight, and it's the longer we're going to be virtual, I think about this in 2 ways. Number one, we're building trust and we're building security with students virtually. And then when they come back to us face to face, that is another relationship that we have to build. And that relationship needs to be established before that time. They're either going to come into your classroom loving you, or they're going to come into your classroom with a preconceived notion of who you were on the TV screen. And that's a hard one. You can't, you look at somebody's profile or from the shoulders up, and it's so impersonal until you see the person. We just had an instrument issue day where kids came by and picked up their instruments, and it was a completely different world to see the entire person versus the mugshot. And they're like, hey, you're Mr. Starnes, you're the guy on TV. Yeah, I am the guy on TV, and you're it's a new level there. So I think I'd like to jump into what the big buzzword is right now, is the social and emotional learning. The SEL component about somehow creating an emotional connection with the student when they're not typically there. So the social and emotional learning aspect of things is a big deal across the country. And I think that's something that maybe we as a team tonight address, and how we can, yes, teach the pedagogy, yes, teach the curriculum, yes, meets the needs of the students musically, but how can we meet their social and emotional needs in this format, so when they walk through that door, they're already in love with you? Thoughts?
I think one of the big things is making sure the students really know that we have a genuine interest in what they're doing, not just in our classroom, but to make sure, like, if they're not doing in our fine arts class, or they're not turning in their assignments, they're probably not doing that in their other classes too. And I've just gone as far just to check in with the students. Listen, I see you're not doing your work. Let's get this stuff turned in, because the grades mean something this year. And I think some of the kids are still in that mindset, oh, I don't have to do anything, which hopefully is not the case, and that they're slowly learning that. But I try and reiterate that every day with my students, be like, listen, does somebody have anything to say? And a lot of times they're afraid to say stuff. And even the very first week of school, I did like a show and tell, like, bring me your favorite thing and let's have a class show and tell. Because otherwise, how do we get to really meet with those students and talk to them unless we have time where, like Cory said, you plan that day. And I've even had a couple times where students have come to me and asked for help. And I have spent 30 minutes on a Zoom call helping one girl upload a document into CTLS, and she didn't even know how to save it on her computer. So it turned into this whole computer thing. She's like, oh my God, Dr. K, thank you so much. I said, now you know how to do it. Now you can go show somebody else. But I think that kind of connection is so important, but especially with our freshman class in the high school, they're the ones that are the hardest to connect to in this thing, because we have never met them or met them very briefly. And just being able to tell a student, hey, let's meet me at my office hour here and I will help you. I helped someone tune a cello over Zoom call. And then I was like, let me show you how to fix your bow grip. And he was like, oh, cool. Okay, so just that kind of connection. And ever since that point, he's been more attentive and more showing himself in class, which is great to see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jarrett, Cory?
Sure, I'll go. I think the cool thing, and when we talk about not being overwhelmed and not overthinking it, is every time I hear social emotional learning, I go, that's music, and I'm not trying to make it seem like it's easy, but I think out of any profession that is the best equipped to be able to do social emotional learning, it's us, and I realize that there's a lot of restrictions that have been placed on what we do, but at the end of the day, when you're talking about Vivaldi or you're analyzing music or you're doing a do now, and there's such an ability to talk about that. And I think the hardest part is so much of what we do gets zapped. The emotion gets zapped. We always say we don't want our bands to sound like recordings or our orchestras to sound like a finale file. And that's the hard part about the situation we're in. But, I think if you can just continue to, as an incoming teacher, especially someone that's young, is remember that the kids are naturally going to gravitate to you because you're a younger teacher, and sometimes that's dangerous because they see a playmate and they see a friend and they get excited. But on the other token, it's that youthful energy and that enthusiasm about the profession that's what we all need right now. So as a young teacher incoming, just remember when you hear that buzzword, really that means be yourself and get kids as excited about music as you are coming out of college right now when you're ready to set the world on fire. They really, really need that with all of the uncertainty, and a lot of their teachers aren't happy with the current situation, and you will have such an ability to inspire them and get them excited about what they do.
Thank you very much. That's great. Cory?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything that was just said was spot on. And it was interesting too, like we had to do a social emotional learning, a training during our pre-planning time. And it's funny, like what Jarrett just said, like when my colleague and I were going through this training, we were looking at it like, I feel like this is what we do every day, and this is just our style of teaching, and I'll say this, this is my 15th year teaching. And from day one of my philosophies has always been, I want my classroom to be a safe environment for all students. I want them to feel like they can be themselves. They can just, be who they are. And part of that too, especially with what's going on right now, is allowing the kids to kind of talk about what's going on right now and allowing them to do that and not to be afraid to talk to them about it. Like there's some, like on Fridays, one of the things that we do is we set aside time for character and leadership development. And there's a number of books that I'm kind of pulling from. One, actually, it's right here on my desk. I don't know if you've ever seen this before, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. It's fantastic. There's a workbook that goes along with it. There's another book called The One Thing by Gary Keller that is probably one of my favorites. It's incredible. But if you take some of these books, a recommendation that I got from a good friend of mine was, if you read something and you're passionate about it, that's something you should discuss with your kids. And have that discussion with them, about creating good habits, and then it's also, there's nothing wrong with talking to the kids about, with anything in life, you're going to get out of it what you put in, so it's the same thing now too, like with digital learning, like if they put in a lot, they're going to get a lot. We're spending a lot of time, developing these lesson plans, so for them, it's like, you still have to put in what you want to get out of this. And I don't think anyone should be afraid to have those conversations, especially at the high school level. It's like those kids need to start understanding. It's like, you're right. This is a life lesson. We always talk about music. is about making music, but also teaching our students those life lessons that are going to carry with them throughout whatever career they do. I mean, I'm sure all of us can probably say we've had students who've become lawyers, doctors, dentists, and whatnot, and they come back and they say, band was the one thing that really taught me these skills that made me successful with what I'm doing. So I think that's the big one too, is just allowing that safe environment for them to talk about those things.
Great advice, Cory. And I'm glad you brought up the leadership component of it. And one of the things that I would just say that's very easy, if you're out there teaching right now, you probably have to have those walks between classes by yourself and that little voice in your head that says, remain professional at all cost. You can create the best lesson plan in the world and not have technology work, which we've all had happen, and you've got to completely jump ship and figure out what replaces that. Or if you're in the middle of, we had here a couple of weeks ago where an entire network across the entire school district went down, and it was right at the end of the day when some students needed some information to be able to get to the next day. And so we just have to remain professional and as positive as we can possibly be. None of us want to be in this situation, but the last thing the kids need to see is us not wanting to be in this situation. So I think the leadership part of it, whether it comes from an actual lesson or whether it comes from our daily human side, or whether it comes from our character through that computer every single day, it's got to remain professional, positive, friendly, and we're in this together. In this last quarter hour, I want to have each of our panelists be thinking about, and I prompted them on this a little bit before, so they don't know what this is going to be, but I'd like for you to give me your best of. If there are two programs that you could not live without as far as the how and how you're doing your teaching right now, what are the two programs you absolutely would recommend to our panelists that they should take a look at? Paula?
Ooh. Okay, one of them I would completely recommend Flipgrid, because I think that's a really great assessment tool, and it allows the kids to play in their own house, and they can redo it as many times as they want to. And my second one would probably be, I don't know. I really like Spark Video. I have created a ton of instructional videos to use for my class, especially with still photos of setup. And then it's really great, especially on I have an iPhone where I can voice over and the quality of sound is incredible. And they're just like 1 to 2 minutes. And I think and even for posters or any kind of announcement you want to make, Spark Post is fantastic. One thing I would check is wherever you're at with your school, if they have a school account, a lot of times you can access it for free. So, which is a great source. I know in Cobb County we have that. And so I'm hoping a lot of the other school districts also have that agreement with Adobe on that, but it's really a great program to use.
I'm going to check it out tomorrow. I don't know that program, so you just taught me something. Thank you. Cory, what do you like?
Yeah, so if I had to pick two, I would, like Paula said, Flipgrid is one, and a couple of reasons for that. One, it's free, which that's huge. The other is there's with this degree that I just finished up over the summer with some of the research that I did, it's a teaching system called PALS, and it translates to peer assisted learning strategies. And it's a tutoring system for students. And essentially what it's doing is, you kind of have to, there's a little legwork that goes into it of training the students how to do this. But essentially you pair students up, and one is the tutor and one is the 2D, the student, and then they flip, so at one, and we kind of know as teachers, we learn way more by teaching, so we're essentially helping the students learn how to teach information. So what Flipgrid can do, if you have breakout rooms, if you're allowed to do that, you can use that as well. But with Flipgrid, kids can comment on videos. So, they can go in, like, I'm going to have one student that's really good with scales and one student that's a little weaker with scales. And the weaker student's going to post the scales. And then the one that's really good is going to go in and comment and give some skills to develop. And then they'll flip. And they'll work on something else where the student that was the teacher, that was a student that will now become the teacher, the tutor. And you can use Flipgrid to do that because they can comment on each other's videos. So that's one. And that's something that the kids are really interested in. They love doing that. It's like when they get to feel like they're teaching, and then at the end of the day, they are becoming more critical analyzing and evaluating everything that they're doing. So that's a great tool to use, and that's a really cool way to use it as well. The other would be smart music, especially, and this one, it's not, you know, the cheapest thing, but it is really, really beneficial if you can get it. Especially with everything going on now, it gets rid of any kind of copyright issues with music, because the music is there. You know, so when you say, I want to rehearse this piece of music, they go on smart music, and I mean, they can hear their part if they need to hear it. But the cool thing too is they can hear all the other parts. So when we're talking about, we need to work on individual skills, you can't work on the ensemble skills. They can hear the other parts going. So at some point when they come back and they're sitting in the ensemble, they kind of know, and it's like, I remember hearing that. It's like, yes, that's the melody. I want you to hear that one. You have the counter melody here. You're the harmony. You know, so they have that ear training already on those pieces of music, and they have it at their fingertips, at their exposure. They can do it on any device that they want to, and we use that not necessarily as an assessment tool, but really just like how they are preparing pieces of music and how they're rehearsing the pieces of music. And we can go in and hear that. And it's like, hey, try this. Are you working on this? Or have you thought about this? Maybe slow the tempo down here to work on this run, you know, or things like that, where we can really get critical with how they're rehearsing. So again, when they get back in person, they're better at that skill too.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Jarrett, what do you guys use at CTJ?
I mean, I'll go right onto the smart music thing. I'll piggyback off of that, and just how, you know, I say all the time, the software is not perfect. I don't think there's anything that does what it can do that is. But I would say, you know, smart music, music first, any of those programs where a student is allowed to record something into the technology and get some instant feedback, I think it keeps them engaged. I think the fact that they can go and browse the different pieces, smart music has updated so many different things in the library now, from technique exercises, our fundamentals books are in there, scales, and I think that they've been really generous with offering, you know, the premium platform out for people to be able to use that. So just the kids think it's a lot of fun, and I can tell you, even starting to hear kids back live again, the preparation from them working on smart music, you feel like they're still keeping up with some of the things you might want them to as players. And then the second thing that I would say has been a lifesaver for us is the Tonal Energy app. And the Tonal Energy app, you know, Mr./Mrs. Smiley Face, the green smiley face, the shade face, and a lot of those guys were Texas band directors that created that, and tried to come up with an app that would just do everything to monitor individual practice. So what I love about it is they turn it on, they boot it up, and it says, hey, you had 45 minutes of active practice yesterday. It's kind of like Big Brother on the practice, and it keeps them honest. And I know that they're getting ready to release a whole bunch of really, really new and exciting tools that they've been tossing out there with interval recognition and some of the note stuff. And so I just feel like that's a tool that if your students can get that on their phones, it's a real game changer in terms of the quality of their individual practicing. The note shape tool, the tuning tool with just and equal temperaments. And I mean, I can brag about it all day, just because I love watching our kids with it, and they get so obsessed with trying to get that smiley face to turn green, and it's cool. It's been really wonderful during this time.
That's great. And I'll share a couple as well. One of them I mentioned earlier, and it's one that Cory actually introduced me to, and it's called Padlet, Padlet. It's, again, another free program. I think if you go up to 4 different boards on it, it's free. After that, it's a paid subscription. But this allows students to go to different like YouTube or other links that they can upload, and it instantly, it's basically, if you see it, it becomes a collage board of everything that you're talking about and wanting to listen to, and looks like an Apple Music board with a play button on it with a cue ready to go. And so we have listening every single day at the very beginning of the day, where a student says, I choose a student who would like to talk about the piece they picked and why. And it doesn't have to be just orchestral or wind literature. It might be a choral work. It might be a pop tune. It might be a Broadway tune. But that goes back to, hey, you're just not a band or an orchestra director. You're a real human that listens to music, with a caveat being there can't be any explicit lyrics or things like that. But what attracted you to that particular piece of music, and introduce us to this artist? And I can't tell you the number of artists that I've learned just over the last 2 or 3 weeks that I want to know more about, Or my private teacher said I should be listening to this cellist who's an 18-year-old cellist in China that we should be listening to. And you learn yourself by just listening and watching what it is that the students are doing. The other one I would say is this Flip.io program, and we've talked about that a little bit tonight. I saw my kids come to life this week when they were able to create music, and it's so interactive. Again, it's a free account. I think it's incredibly valuable. And they can actually play along with, they can hear the part coming back. It's got every single key you could want. It's got ornamentations. They can write music. And I've had parents email me and saying, I can't believe my child is not only writing music, but they're actually playing now the music that they're writing upstairs. It's the first I've ever heard, and my child's been playing their instrument for 7 years or whatever. So I think that part of it, and Jarrett kind of alluded to it, there's that smiley face inside the child that says, I did it. And if they made the little smiley face light up on tonal energy, or if they wrote a piece of music and their friends and their acquaintances heard that on a playback through Flipgrid, it was amazing to watch the reactions of the students. And it's got a PDF version where they can actually save as a PDF and send you the hard copy in a PDF. So while you're listening to it, you're actually watching what their process was and how they put that piece of music together. So I highly recommend that. I just think it's a fabulous, fabulous tool. The last topic I want to address or have our panel address is the assessment piece. This is a hard one because we're hearing it needs to be a welcoming environment. It doesn't feel like it needs to be a punitive thing in terms of their grade. There's a lot of disconnect that we can't do with regard to assessment. So maybe a couple of pointers, maybe from each of you guys about how you guys involve assessment when it comes to that point. Jarrett, we'll start with you.
I think the way that we've tried to do assessment the last couple of weeks is it's based on completion and just trying to keep them at a standard. So we've done a few video assignments of singing or a few short clips of music, and if we use smart music, maybe if they can get above a 90%, then we consider that to be a pass. And we're just doing things where we're trying not to overwhelm them, but we still want the standard to be what we would, even if it's a little different and it looks different. And the kids have kept up with that because it's again, I say if they're taking band, orchestra, choir, they most likely really want to be there, and just trying to make the assessment based on things that are manageable, on small chunks of things, and then just being reasonable with it, keeping that high standard and that expectation, but maybe not being as nitpicky as maybe we might be if we were in person with them and they weren't juggling all of this. So it's again not stressing yourself out trying to hold them so accountable, but still expecting that they be great at what they do.
Great. Paula?
I've tried to make a rubric as specific as I could, but I think the greatest thing about assessments right now is I used to do them all live in class, and now that they're recorded, I can actually listen back and I can actually see what they're doing and provide them with some really good feedback. Now, it's my hopes that they're reading all of their feedback. Of course, that's the next step, but I am providing them with feedback of things that they need to work on articulation-wise, pitch-wise, setup-wise. And if they take that information, like we talked about earlier, that's going to allow them to become their own teachers. And I think that's really the great thing about a situation here. We have all the skills and knowledge that we can present to our student. It's what they take with it to become their own teacher, so that they can become better and then hopefully teach somebody else down the road.
Great, thank you. Cory?
Yeah, there's two things I could share on this one. One would be if there's any type of assessment that you want the students to do, like for a playing assessment, something that can get them a little more engaged and excited is having them become part of the process of creating the rubric. If they feel they're a part of it, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I know exactly what I need to do. And then they know what they're accountable for on those things. So they become more engaged in it because they feel part of the process for that assessment. So that's one easy one, just having them a part of it. And again, as a teacher, you'll guide that. Where you want it to go, what the rubric to look like, but essentially the students do feel a part of that. So that would be one. And then the other is from an engagement standpoint, it's like giving some options maybe. you know? So like at the end of each week, we have an assignment where they have to do but they have the option like, hey, do you want to play something that you want to show for us this week that you learned? Like, is it like your scales? Is it something with the solo program that we're doing on different solos? Is it a composition that you worked on this week that you want to share with us? And they kind of pick what they want to, express that week. And it's like, I worked on this and I'm really proud of this. I'm excited about this. So if they get that option, it's like, I'm pumped to show you this right now. I want to show this off, so that again is those little options of getting them a part of the process and then giving them those options to keep them engaged and excited about what it is that they're doing.
That's great. Great advice. We have a real quick question in the chat. The question is, what has your experience been with Soundtrap? Have any of you guys used Soundtrap before? So I think our attendee has given us homework now. So I'm going to write that one down, and I'm going to learn Soundtrap tonight, or at least find out more about it. So I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. And just like Soundtrap, there are hundreds of programs that are starting to emerge that we're all going to have access to. And I'm hoping to be able to hang on to even in the long term, not just during the virtual time. Well, we're coming to the end of our time. I want to say a huge thank you to Cory, Paula, and Jarrett. You guys are incredible people, incredible educators, and I knew that you were using a lot of virtual things in your classroom, and this has been absolutely phenomenal. I also want to thank Music for All for hosting this series. We're going to be doing this throughout the entire year. Continue to watch our websites, continue to watch our social media pages. Susan Smith and I are putting these together throughout the entire year. I think we're in our sixth or seventh one coming up. So we hope you'll join us. Music for All's mission simply is to create, provide, and expand positively life-changing experiences through Music for All. Our vision is to be a catalyst to ensure that every child across America has access and opportunity to participate in active music making in his or her scholastic environment. And I'm going to add to that, whether that is in a virtual environment or whether that is in a face-to-face environment. And that's why this project is so important to see that the next wave of educators that are on this tonight and forward continue to push our mission, not only from a music educator standpoint, but from Music for All. And finally, I'd like to thank Yamaha. I've said that at the beginning of the program. As a national presenting sponsor, this would not be possible without their support on an annual basis for all Music for All programming. Absolutely incredible people, 100% dedicated to music education, and we could not thank them enough. Before we say goodnight tonight, it is important that you understand now more than ever that we are in a crisis, and we need to do everything we can to continue to support through your financial gifts, Music for All. This service tonight comes to you completely free, but know that Music for All is looking to continue to grow and expand these kinds of opportunities. And a gift for us would be absolutely incredible at this point. And we know that everybody's budgets are tight, but we would ask that you consider a gift to musicforall.org/give. And help us to do anything that we can we will persevere through this. My friend Brian Balma just says there'll be two types of people that come out of a pandemic. One that found a way to get worse because they just cried, poor me, the entire time. And the other one that said, I will not let a challenge keep me down. And they're going to come out way, way better as a result of this. And that will be Music for All. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Again, thank you to Paula, Cory, and to Jarrett. We hope you'll come back to our next one, and please watch our social media for that. Thank you, everybody, and good night.